What's up, y'all? It's TruthTiger, and today I'm going to talk about how society is making people sick. I believe that illnesses and sicknesses don't just come from traditional places. The traditional medical explanations of disease and stuff like that don't totally make sense. I think there are spiritual reasons for sicknesses and illnesses. You'll have to excuse that background noise. I just got the dishwasher running here, but yeah, like I'm noticing a lot of people are getting ill, a lot of people are getting sick, a lot of people are having strange medical issues. I see it around me a lot. There's a guy I used to work with, really good guy, great guy, awesome guy, and I guess he had some kind of lymphoma or some kind of cancer on his neck, and his neck was like the size of a baseball, even bigger. And I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, he got it treated, he's better, he's healed, it's all good, but I remember seeing that, thinking this is a pretty healthy guy, good guy. Like, why is this happening? And I was just on my YouTube feed, just kind of watching some videos. Something came up that I guess a lot of young women who don't smoke are getting lung cancer. Non-smokers, age 22 to 40, something like that, and the doctors are seeing these increasing. Sorry, I got a hiccup here. These increasing rates of lung cancer. And I'm like, man, what is happening? And then in the comments section, I saw something about how a lot of young men are getting prostate cancer. And I'm like, what's going on? Why are we all so sick? Why are we all so ill? And, there's obviously these, chemicals on the food, a lot of pesticides. A lot of our food is genetically modified. Our food is not of good quality, so that could be a big part of it. Then there's the whole COVID thing. Maybe it's the COVID vaccine. Maybe it's COVID itself. I don't really know. Maybe it's both that are causing this. This kind of thing did kind of pop up after COVID, so that could certainly be an explanation. That could certainly be part of it. But my thoughts on this, and I think all the things I talked about before are factors, but I think our society is just a society that's becoming very lonely. There's a lack of community, a lack of purpose, a lack of fulfillment, and people don't really have a good purpose for their life. And when I think about the young women getting lung cancer, I think about the lungs, that's like kind of like where do you breathe in life? And I kind of think it's like they don't really have much reason to live. They may be very depressed. I think there's a lack of community, and community is so important. And I think community is even more important for women than it is for men, because that's like where you come together, you cook the food, you talk to people, you make friends, I remember growing up as a kid, any community kind of gathering, it would definitely be the women that wanted to stay late and do it, and, they got a lot from it. And I think because there is no community or real connection anymore, people's families are all messed up, everyone's lonely, everyone's isolated. I think that's very hard on people, women especially, and I think this is starting to manifest as illness and sickness and disease in people because they're not getting the things they need. I saw some study about like elderly people, and apparently the ones that are like stay the healthiest are the ones that keep up good friends, good community, good connections, and that have like kind of positive vibes around them, And when you don't have that community, you don't have that connection, you're isolated. I think those kind of negative vibes, that negative energy, I think it can manifest itself as disease. And I think we're really seeing this, And I think just with the gender war, I think a lot of women are really feeling unloved and unwanted and unneeded. And, we've kind of changed things to where women step out of the traditional feminine role. And now we're trying to seek careers and stuff like that. I mean, that's totally fine. You got to make your money. You got to hustle. You got to get ahead, whatever. But I think that's being put aside for family and stuff like this. And I think this whole gender war thing where it's like men don't need women, women don't need men, I think it's really causing pain and suffering, and I think that pain and suffering is manifesting itself as sickness and as illness. And when you talk about men, young men getting prostate cancer at higher rates than normal, a lot of it's the hypersexuality, the pornography, whatever. I struggle with these things, but I've been really fighting it and really battling and really finding victory in that. But I think a lot of it's that, and I think a lot of people are just too busted up to even really make connections with others. I think a lot of romance is kind of dead, and I think a lot of people are just really feeling unloved, unwanted, unneeded. There's no attention being given. And I think for a lot of men these days, going back to the women with lung cancer thing, I think a lot of men these days don't really feel safe giving women attention. They don't really feel safe coming up to women and talking to them. They don't really feel safe showing love to women because it could be perceived in a bad way or in a wrong way, or it can make them look bad. And I think not just between men and women, but people are so ruthless and cunning and manipulative that nobody really wants to mess with anybody because they're scared of just being stabbed in the back. And, you know, with our culture also, it's all about this social media and putting on a show and posting your memories and all this stuff, but nobody's really interacting with each other or having good community or having friends. I think a lot of people really don't feel like they have much of a support system. And I think it's just festering on the inside, and it's giving people cancer and making people really sick and really messed up and getting people just in this bad state and in this bad way. And I think these days also, like, everybody needs to be a professional. Everybody needs to, like, put the community and put their friends aside so they can climb the corporate ladder and be this social climber and this socialite and go, oh, wow, look at my career. Oh, wow, look at my education. Oh, wow, look at this. And again, I'm not saying don't pursue a career or education or anything like that. Like, move forward, do what you got to do. But I think a lot of people have pretty much sacrificed community or connections with others, for that. And that's kind of a connection to the ego. And I think a lot of people are just choosing their own egos and their own selfishness over connection with others, And I think just with a lot of the stuff that's happened in the world, like, the social norms have changed so much with COVID, with 9/11 first, but with COVID recently. And when these kind of events happen, and, I can't confirm this, but I believe that these events were probably intentional and we're not being told the proper story about them. And it was sort of something that they could do to get more government regulations, get people more scared, more down, more willing to submit to authority, to get people to have a lower level of morals and ethics, to get communities fractured and disconnected, and to get people to look more to the system as, like, a hero for them, and to look to the system as community. And the system does not give you community. The government, the education system, the military, the healthcare system, the this, the that, whatever, the UN, there's so much of it, but none of it really is going to give you that community or that love or that connection. And the media, and a lot of people are just looking to these things, politics, and they're not looking to community and people around them. And I think it's really causing them to become very sick and very ill. And a lot of people are just so in their own weird world, They don't have any good connection with others. They don't have any good community. And I've been isolated and alone myself before just to get away from toxic people. And I'll say this, like, you're better off being alone and isolated than being around toxic people, And I think this will segue me to my next point, where I think a lot of people, they just have bad friends, bad community. They don't have friends that have their back. They're in relationships and in marriages they don't even want to be in. They're marrying people that they do not love. They're in romantic relationships with people that they do not love, and they're just sort of going along with something even though it makes them unhappy and even though they know it's not even right for them. And I think a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people have bad friends, bad families, very toxic, manipulative situations, and there's constant drama, and that drama will wear you down and will make you sick. And the truth is, you go anywhere in society, you'll find this drama, you'll find these narcissists, these manipulators, sociopaths, psychopaths. You'll find just a lot of not good stuff, And I think with our society just becoming so off kilter and so perverted and so weird, and, there's no real sense of normality anymore. There's no real sense of, like, what's the proper order of things. And I think a lot of people are just accepting disordered things and are going along with disordered things because the system's telling them that it's okay. And I think just having that everywhere is also causing people just to be, like, just really not in a good state. Just people are just, like, very confused and unhappy and are just not doing good, And the crazy thing is, I've known people who were longtime addicts, longtime smokers, long time whatever, maybe they got clean, they sobered up, but they're still smoking a pack a day, and they seem to not have very much health issues despite being, of old age, smoking a pack a day, being overweight, being in their 60s and doing all these drugs, I don't want to say a word that could maybe get YouTube mad at me, but, taking substances that are not good for them and stuff like that and living that lifestyle. And obviously not everybody survives that, but I've known people like that, and they seem fine, totally healthy, totally in a good state, So I don't know what's going on here, And I think a lot of people, they just have so much anxieties. People are more anxious than ever. Despite all this modern technology and all this modernity, people are just more anxious. They're more depressed. I know so many people that are on antidepressants, and on the outside it looks good, but on the inside they're just rotting away. And I think we've become so spiritually disconnected. I think we have disconnected from God. We have disconnected from God's truth and God's love, and we're trying to abide in the love of the world and the love of the devil instead. And there's no love. The world does not have love for you. The devil does not have love for you. And I think people have just disconnected from that so much, and they're not really abiding in the love of God. They don't have any spiritual connection. Everything is just carnality, and they're starting just to rot away on the inside. And I'm seeing it so much around people, and I see a lot of people that just really seem very unhappy and very unfulfilled and are just not living to their purpose. Unfortunately, that's most people I see. They're just really not living to their purpose. And you could see with a lot of people, it's like they seem to be like, they live a good life. They don't really mess around. Like, I've got some problems. I've got some temptations. I've got some issues. I've made mistakes. I've screwed up, I have. But I see people that seem like they're not even really doing all that, but there's just something missing. There's something that they're just not being fulfilled with. And the thing is, I have my own health issues. I have asthma, I have celiac disease, I have Raynaud's disease. Like, I got a whole host of them. I do. And, for my story, I think just growing up in my family without having a lot of love or care or connection and just feeling very isolated from the time I was a baby, then I think the asthma starts to come because I didn't have that love or connection. I was just kind of thrown aside. And then going through my teenage years, growing up as an Orthodox Jew, going away to these crazy schools, having so much religious pressure and stress on me, just being in that crazy pressure cooker of that lifestyle, and just being in that lifestyle is kind of like very OCD and very ritualistic and dogmatic and weird, and it's like a false idea of God. I think that's when I got celiac disease, because I just could not stomach that. I couldn't stomach living my life in such a weird religious OCD nonsense, not connected to truth kind of way. So I think that's when celiac disease started. And then when I first found Christ, I got connected to the church, but the people in the church are not good people. They don't really serve God. It's a false Christ that they serve, and they're very deceptive and evil, and they're very egotistical, and they just want to beat their chest and go, Jesus, I'm righteous. Why don't you pray as much as me? Why don't you read the Bible as much as me? Why aren't you as religious as me? And they're very hypocritical, and they gossip, and they don't really do good deeds or good works, and they actually forsake the name of God and make the name of God look bad by doing that. And they don't, set a good example or anything like that, or do good works or really anything. And then I think I got Raynaud's disease after that, because it's like I was expecting love, I was expecting care, but I didn't get it, And I think that's what's really happened with me, is there's love and care that was needed, but it wasn't given. So my body responded in a bad way, I see it with a lot of people with allergies and stuff too, where there's certain love and care they needed, but it didn't really come. And we all need to love one another, care about one another, have community with each other, help each other out. We all really got to be doing that a lot more, and we're not. And I think that's just a big part of what is making society so sick. And yes, you have all the crazy chemicals, all the crazy pesticides, all the crazy genetically engineered food, all this crazy stuff from the medical system, these crazy pills, these crazy antidepressants, these crazy opioids, you got a lot of craziness from the medical system and from the system in general, from whatever with agriculture, and you guys spray all these chemicals and do these genetically engineered stuff. And I think that plays a part. And I think a lot of the COVID and the COVID vaccine and all that nonsense, I think played a part too. But I think it's more about just the fact that our spirits have been so crushed and so broken. The fact that we look around trying to find love and there is none. We look around trying to find care and there is none. There is just selfishness and ego and greed, and people do not make time for each other. And I think so many people are either isolated and alone or caught in a toxic web of just bad people, and nobody really has the care or the support that they need. And another thing, I know some people who are like workaholics. They like work so hard, they do so much, they take on so much responsibility. And I've seen a lot of people, they just really burn themselves out like that. They burn themselves out bad, just worshiping work. And I think we need to have more priorities. the time for work is the time for work, but the time to not be working is the time to not be working. And I know people that like they don't sleep right, they don't eat right, literally because of just how much work they do. So I think a lot of us are just way overworked too. And I think a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of people, obviously this is more guys than girls. When I talk to a lot of guys about their relationships, they're very like matter of fact. They're like, well, she could stick around or she could leave. We'll see if it works out, or they're like, this is happening now. It's cool. I guess I hope it works. I don't know, I guess I'm just doing this. And I really think about like relationships and stuff like that. Like there's not a lot of love. Like people aren't with their soulmates. People don't want to get married and have kids. People don't want to have families. I don't know. And just like the heart and soul is kind of gone. Everything's just become transactional and systematic, and I don't know. And also people don't really seem to have as much fun as they used to. Like people used to just hang out and have fun, play a board game, have a drink, have a good time, eat some food, chill out. And it just seems like that kind of hanging out and having fun is going away. And I don't know, like I really think it's causing sickness and illness. I really believe that there are spiritual and both psychological reasons for sickness and illness. If someone's very anxious all the time, like I was, it's like that's eventually going to lead to like bad digestion or high blood pressure or something like that. Like if you have a lot of unresolved anger, your blood pressure is going to be high, your joints might tighten up, your mind's going to be all weird, I really think that's like a big part of it, are these spiritual and psychological factors. And I think people just being so disconnected from the Creator, disconnected from God, disconnected from Jesus Christ, disconnected from spiritual truth. I don't know, like people don't really pray, people don't really they don't really do any of that anymore. And that used to be a very common part of life, is the spiritual part of life, but that's kind of totally gone now. And not gone for me, but that's kind of totally gone for most people. And I think that kind of special peace that you can get from only God, like people aren't getting that. They're not getting that peace and healing that they can, get from the Creator. And I don't know, I think also the last factor, I think a lot of people they kind of give up. They kind of just say like, my life is going to be this. I'm not going to move forward. I'm not going to advance. I'm not going to get better. They sort of get somewhere in life. They settle on it. They stay there, and they just kind of stay in this kind of endless cycle, They stay in this endless cycle, and they don't really improve things. And I don't know. I think a lot of people these days, there's more vices. There's just more stuff you can get in trouble with, more stuff to mess around with, more stuff that's not good for your health. I don't know, and I'm not trying to judge anybody, and I have my own vices and my own issues and stuff, so I'm not going to judge anybody, but there's just a lot more of that stuff too. And there's just a lot of people that just seem like they're really depressed. Like I just think being like super depressed for years after years after years, it's going to eventually do something to your physical health, Same with being anxious years after years after years. It's going to do something to your physical health. And we need to heal this world. And the thing is, the government's not going to heal this world. The medical system's not going to heal this world. The education system's not going to heal this world. The military will not heal this world. The police will not heal this world. The UN will not heal this world. The education system will not heal this world. People who love to protest aren't going to heal this world. All these things are the system. You can think of a million of them, but all these things from the system. The corporations, missed that one. The corporations, the banks, they're not going to heal this world. It's going to have to come from you and I. Because the thing is, the system is just going to make the world worse and worse and worse until things are unaffordable, everyone is sick, everyone is unhealthy. They're just going to go until the world's like totally destroyed, So it's got to come from each and every single one of us as individuals to start to say, no, we're going to make the changes. We're going to try to build a community with people around us. We're going to get rid of bad people in our lives. And it's hard. It's very, very hard. And we're going to start to really have a good spiritual connection and get close to God. We're going to practice good morals and ethics. And I think that's the last one too, is like, there isn't really morals or ethics anymore. Like people just seem to just not really care about right or wrong really at all, It doesn't really matter to them. And I think that leads to disease and illness, It's like you have moral decay, and then that leads to physical decay. And we're really starting to see this. And I'm really sad about what's happening. To see, I forgot to say this, but I grew up with a guy who had cancer when he was in his early 20s, and there was a lot of family problems, and he grew up the same way I grew up, and he's a good guy, but he had a lot of his demons he battled with, and I saw that, and I was like, man, I see what's happening. It's like people are just so isolated, mistreated. I don't know, I think people are just not getting the love or the care that they need. And I mean, a lot of it comes down to just bad parents too. That'll probably be my final point. Like, I don't know what happened to like being a parent and taking care of your kids and loving your kids and being there for them and like having a solid, steady house. But I really think that's going away, and parents just care about career, or they don't care about their kids, or they don't even really feel like they have to raise their kids, or they don't like do anything to like teach the kids or guide the kids. And there's no kind of structure, and these kids are just kind of floating around like, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, I don't know anything about life, I'm confused. And I think that's happening too. I think that's really happening too, and I think people just are not living to their purpose. They're not really doing good around them, they're not helping people, they're just sort of going to their jobs, doing their thing, going home, and that's it. And I think we got to do stuff to help those around us, do stuff to help our community, do things that are really good and like fulfilling, So yeah, like I see this society in this world just making people sick, and these are the reasons why I think it's happening. And we're going to be heading toward, I think, more sickness, more disease. I think life expectancy will actually start to go down and not up because of all this isolation. I think even the medical system is going to have to start to acknowledge these spiritual and psychological reasons for disease. In years past, they would shut it down. They'd be like, nope, shutting it down, not true. It's all physical, it's not psychological, not spiritual. It's just the third dimension. There's nothing bigger out there. The way you think can't affect your health. Your spiritual connection can't affect your health. They had this very, very carnal, solipsistic, like only what I can see directly in front of me is true. If I can't see it directly in front of me, it's totally false. And it's like, whoa, like there's a possibility of things out there, things that you don't know or haven't really studied, and you're just going to throw it away. There's a guy, Gabor Mate, he wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is about how stress and childhood trauma and stuff like that can cause physical health issues, and they tried to shut him down, and they tried to say that his stuff was BS and whatever, but more and more we're starting to see that this is the truth, that this is really the truth, and that our sick society, and our society is sick, and if you live in a sick disease society, that disease is going to transfer over to us, and that's part of what's happening. So, we got to make the change. We got to start to show more love and kindness to people around us, be more kind to ourselves, pray more, be closer to God, live more to our purpose, and just like take those better steps forward. And we should find healing, but don't expect society to heal you. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Much love, God bless, and I will see you all next time.